Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a positive and productive day. My name is Kel with the Planner Isle, and today I'm doing a detailed walkthrough of my budgeting system and sharing a few of the tips and tricks that I use to help manage and track my finances. This is part 2 in my 3-part planning routine series. If you want to see part 1, I'll link it up here in the right hand corner. Part 3 will be out soon, so make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. This is a pretty long video. I've included timestamps in case you want to skip ahead to a particular section. If you have any topics that you want to learn more about or anything you'd like for me to cover, make sure to let me know in the comments. And as always, I will be including links to everything that I use down below. Without further ado, let's hop in. So my budget system consists of 3 main tools. So first is my wall calendar. This is what I use to see my bills at a glance. I do color code here just to help me quickly identify types of bills. Second is my budget planner, and this sits inside of my main A5 agenda. I have one main section here and then 4 subsections: budget overview, my expense tracker, resources and tools, and passwords. And then third is the Mint app. I primarily use this to set spending goals and see trends in the areas that I'm tracking for the year, but I also use it to just double check to make sure that nothing squirrely is going on with my account, like weird charges or fraud or other things like that. So starting with my wall calendar, in part 1, I talked about my scheduling routine and shared how I use my monthly and weekly layouts to mark the bills I have to physically pay. Those are the only bills that I write out in my scheduling section. However, I do like having a place where I can see all of my bills at a glance, which is why I'm such a fan of wall calendars. It's just easier for me to see what's coming out of my account without having to flip through my planner or open an app or something on my phone. The calendar I use is the My Big Calendar by Indra with Ian and my planners on Etsy. I absolutely love this calendar. It's very clean and minimal, and it really complements a lot of design styles. It's also practical, which is the primary goal of functional planning. It has really large boxes, which gives you plenty of space to write or use stickers if you prefer. It also has a Monday start, which is great for those of us who work a traditional Monday through Friday schedule, or if you follow a slightly different routine on the weekends. So I typically start filling this out about a week out from the next month. I group my bills into 3 categories: bills I have to log on and pay, which are in green; bills that are auto drafted, which are in blue; and then credit card bills or other payments towards debt, and those are in this mauve color. You certainly don't have to use stickers. It can get pretty expensive, particularly if you have a lot of things coming out of your accounts. I run through these sheets so quickly, but I really don't love my handwriting, which is mainly why I use them. I also just love the look of a nice clean sticker, especially since this is always visible in my office, but you can always use a pen or marker or highlighter to categorize your bills. This is also a great opportunity to use colored pens that may be sitting in the back of your drawer. Whatever makes it easier for you to recognize what's coming due and how you should pay should suffice. If you do opt for stickers, I highly recommend these. These are custom labels from Nicole Hutch Designs. I've been using these for years now. They fit perfectly in each square and just look really nice on this calendar. The only other stickers that I use on my wall calendar are these Payday and Spotlight stickers. The Payday ones are from Orange Umbrella Co. I purchased these like 7 or 8 years ago and never really found a large enough place to use them. When I started wall calendaring for my bills, they ended up being the perfect size. I'm not sure if they carry these anymore, but they do have a lot of different items, so make sure to check them out when you can. These Spotlight stickers are from Cloth and Paper. These are in the color Kyoto. They came in a sub box a while back. They're this really pretty forest green color, which I think fits the theme really well. And I use these to mark days that I go into the office. I work from home, but I do go into the office once a month or so for networking or office events. We do get reimbursed for mileage and parking, so I like to use these to mark those days so I won't forget to include my reimbursements on my expense report. I'll use sticky notes or memos if something of financial importance is coming up, and I also reference this quite a bit if I'm on a call or something and need to check a date, or if I need to pay something that's a really large amount. I can quickly see what bills are coming up and then make plans accordingly. If you don't have space to add a wall calendar, or if you don't like having things on your wall, you can always use large desk calendars. Target and Amazon have some really great options. They can serve the same purpose, being a designated space to see your bills at a glance. Just make sure that if you do opt for a desk calendar, that you try to have it on a secondary desk or somewhere separate from your work desk. If you use it in your main workspace, those calendars do tend to get covered up by your keyboards or notebooks, which limits the functionality of having a large calendar to track your bills. If you have limited desk space and wall space, the third option may be to use a second monitor and use a digital calendar. Just keep in mind that most digital solutions will require your device being on most of the day, and depending on what method that you use, you may have to use apps or editing software to make any updates. If you have the option, I would definitely choose a print calendar, but digital calendars are also good options and really beneficial for those who are on the go a lot or if you're working in a small space. Along those same lines are your daily calendars that most of us use for a variety of scheduling. I'm, of course, talking about iCal, Outlook, BusyCal, and all of those calendar apps that are must haves no matter what you're scheduling. Aside from asking Siri or Alexa to remind me to pay something every now and then, I don't personally use these in my budget planning, but similar to digital calendars, using an app may be more practical for you depending on your daily routine. If you do decide to use one of these apps, I highly recommend Fantastical. I've been using it since grad school, and it's by far the best calendar app that I've ever used. The good thing is that there's a ton of options out there, no matter what your planning style is. Wall calendars work best for me. I'll continue to use mine in 2024, but desk calendars, digital, and calendar apps are all great alternatives as well. So once I've prepped my wall calendar, I'll move into the bulk of my budget routine, which is my budget planner. So opening up my agenda, the bulk of my budgeting happens here in my finance tab. I spoke about these dividers a little bit in part one, but these are from Infinite Lotus. These are my favorite dividers. They're super thin and are perfect if you tend to bulk your planner up. I do keep a full year's worth of inserts in my finance section, so these definitely help keep my agenda as light as possible. In the front, I have my title page. This is one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou, and I just thought it was a good message for this section. On the back, I have a blank page where you can write notes or reminders. This year, I started using it to list bills, but next year, I think I'll include an affirmation page, or I may just leave it blank. I am in the process of designing my 2024 budget bundle, so let me know in the comments what you would like to see included for next year. My 2023 budget inserts are available as a freebie on my website, so feel free to hop over there and check those out if you're interested. So next are where my subsections begin. First is my budget overview, and this is where I track my monthly income, expenses, savings, and debt. On the front of each month is a cover page with a quote at the bottom, and then on the back are my sinking funds. If you aren't familiar with sinking funds, I highly recommend that you use them. They're essentially a fund that you can use to put money aside for a specific purpose or unexpected expense. You can use them to plan for a home or a medical expense. You can use it to put money away for college or a vacation or maybe another large purchase. There's a number of ways that you can set up and track a sinking fund. My setup is pretty simple. I have one column to list your category, a start column to list the amount that you started with, one to log what you added to your fund, one to log what you spent or took out of your fund, and then your end column with the remaining amount that's left in your fund for the next month. So for example, looking at my sinking funds for November, the start amount for November will be the end amount for October. So looking at Amazon Prime, I started with $121.68. I'm adding $13.52. I'm not spending anything, which leaves me with a remainder of $135.20. I pay Prime in December, so when December comes, my starting amount should equal my spend amount, and then my remaining balance will be zero until January, where I add $13.52, and I repeat the process all over again. I talked about this briefly in my May budget setup video, but my sinking funds came in super handy when my cat Luna had a bad accident. A headboard fell on her back and it ended up crushing her hip. She had to have several surgeries over the course of a few months, and it ended up being several $1,000s. Thankfully, I have a sinking fund here for Luna that I keep specifically for emergencies, and I was able to pay for her expenses from her fund without having to worry about pulling it from my checking account. Similarly, I have a sinking fund for medical expenses in general, which I pulled from last year when I hurt my knee. I also have a few categories of things that I pay annually, like Amazon Prime, my card tag, my antivirus, and costs associated with my website, as well as semi-annual dues like my Fitness Pal and my cloth and paper sub box. It's just so much easier for me to put back a set amount for each month, and then when it comes time to pay, I never have to worry about where that money is coming from. My other sinking funds are just things that I put money back for just in case. So car maintenance is a big one, especially living in New Orleans. The streets are pretty bad here. I replaced 3 tires last year, 2 of which were new. I also pull from this anytime that I need to get an oil change or a repair or car service. And then my other funds are pretty straightforward: donations and gifts, Christmas. I like having a fund where I can pull from when holiday season rolls around. Taxes. This year is mainly the TurboTax fee, vacation or travel. I have a line here for planner, and this is what I pull from for any planner inserts and supplies that I need to purchase for the next year. So all of my 2024 specific purchases, I will pull from this fund. Shopping. This one was intended for seasonal shopping, so like coats and boots for winter. I do plan on removing this category for next year. I don't really buy that many clothes anymore, especially since I'm working from home. So anything that I buy seasonal related, I can just purchase normally. And then the last item here is my emergency fund. And this is just money that I put back in case any large unexpected expenses come up. So this is what's in my sinking fund list, but you can use this to put aside money for weddings, childcare, home renovations, HOA dues, or really anything that you see yourself spending a specific or significant amount of money on in the future. Below my sinking fund list, I have a little note section at the bottom, and I really use this to jot down payment reminders if something is increasing in price, check numbers, or other sort of miscellaneous notes that I want to pay attention to or reference when I complete my budget overview for the month. On the second page of my budget inserts, you have my budget overview, which is where I list my income, fixed expenses, and debt. And then on the back, I list my variable expenses, savings, and then I have a summary at the bottom and a place to mark if I was over or under budget for the month. So starting at the top here, I have 2 lines for income. One is for salary and one is for everything else. If you're interested in my budget inserts and you have multiple sources of income, make sure to let me know. Right now, all of these inserts have a set number of boxes, but if you need more lines or would like them pre-filled, make sure to let me know and I can work on a custom layout for you. Next are my fixed expenses, and these are a list of expenses that for the most part should stay the same each month. Here I have my rent, car insurance, car payment, internet and cell phone, and iCloud. Next, you have my streaming services. I used to combine these all in one line, but I decided to list them out separately. A lot of the platforms are upping their prices, so I like to keep them separate so I can easily see which ones have increased in case I decide to cancel. I have music streaming, Dash Pass, Canva, LinkedIn, and then the biggest change this month, which is my student loans. The reason I separate my fixed expenses from my others is that the amount that I spend here are things that I pay every month, no matter what. So if I ever need to cut back on spending, I don't ever really look at my fixed expenses. I always start with my variable. Keeping them separate, it just makes it easier to know exactly how much I can spend or what I need to cut back on, depending on my financial goal for the month. My fixed expenses are set up the same way as my income section, in that I have one column for the name, one column for the amount that I budgeted, one for the amount that I spent, and then a column to list the difference between the two. At the very bottom, I have my debt section, and this is where I list any debt that I'm actively paying off. So this is where credit cards, any like pay-as-you-go or medical payments go. If I have a large medical bill or something, you'll notice that I don't put my car payment or my student loans down here, and that's because those are both debts that have a set amount that I'm paying on for a specified amount of time, unlike my credit card, which I only pay if I've used it that month. Since I don't budget for it in the same way, I like to keep it separate from my payoff debt so I can easily allocate my payments. So flipping over to my variable expenses, this is the section that changes the most from month to month. Everything listed here are either items that change in price every month or non-necessity items that are more of a want, not a need. So what you list here should look different depending on your spending habits, your family size, and your financial situation. If your goal is to save money or track and reduce spending in a certain area, I encourage you to list that here separate from its category. So for example, I have a line for food delivery and eating out, but then I also have a line for Starbucks. Technically, Starbucks is eating out, but because it's not a necessity for me and I do tend to overspend there, I'll list it here separate so I can see exactly how much that I'm spending each month. It's a great way to check yourself and keep yourself accountable. I list my power and water bill here because they do vary each month. I just moved to a new place, so I'll be interested to see what that amount is next month. Groceries, household, and medicine is everything from bread and eggs to toothpaste or detergent or Tylenol. A lot of people separate food groceries from household groceries, and that's totally fine. I felt that it was easier for me to group it all together. It keeps me from having to go through receipts and recalculate for each category. So all of the food that I buy for the house, as well as things like soap or detergent, they're all counted together. The only time that I will separate those receipts is if I buy something during a grocery trip that is specifically separate from household items. So if I end up buying a scratching post for Luna, or if I'm getting groceries at Target and I buy a gift for someone, those will always get recategorized. Food delivery and eating out includes going out to eat or DoorDash or Uber Eats or something. I do get factor meals delivered each week, which I do categorize as groceries and mint since it takes the place of cooking. It is on the expensive side, so I do list it here separately just so I can keep track of how much I'm spending. I've been using Factor for a while now, and in my opinion, it's totally worth the cost. The meals are so good and they're all microwavable. I live by myself, so I get the 6 meals a week package, which is about $95 a month. If you don't cook and you're trying to limit your eating out costs, I would definitely give Factor a try. I have gas and auto care here, so anything car maintenance related I pull from my sinking fund, but things like car washes or detailing, all of that would come out of here. Similar concept with Luna, anything like vet appointments or emergency situations, I'll pull from my sinking fund. This is for her food, toys, litter, and other day to day things that she needs. Personal is going to be nails, hair, makeup, skincare, exercise items, things like that. Stationery and office. So these are things work related and planner related. Gifting would include birthday gifts or other one off purchases that I may get while I'm out shopping. Miscellaneous is anything that doesn't fall into a set category. So things like shipping fees or postage or something. Allowance and fun is where I code entertainment purchases, shopping, games, accessories, or other things that are strictly wants. For sinking funds, I always put the amount that I added to the fund, which is the amount that's coming out of my checking account into my sinking fund pool. And then the last line item here is unbudgeted, and this is going to be anything that I did not budget for the month. So maybe like some fees or parking tickets or other charges that do not have a place in my budget. Again, this is my first place that I go if I ever need to cut back on my expenses. I can also move things around if need be as well. So if I'm on vacation for 2 weeks, I can pause my factor meals for 2 weeks and then use that money towards vacation expenses or put it towards my allowance or savings. Next is my savings category, and this is really straightforward. I have my savings account and then a line for the savings that I keep in cash. The last section of my budget overview is my summary section. Here I just log my total income, total expenses, the total amount that I paid towards debt, and the total that I put back in savings. And then I use my rating over here to check if I was over or under budget, the amount that I went over or under, and then I give myself a little star rating depending on how well that I met my goals for the month. I usually set my budget about a week out from the next month, so I'll have November planned out in the next couple of days. And then throughout the month, as I pay bills, I'll track my income and fill in my fixed expenses and debt balances if I have them. And then I'll fill in the actuals of my variable expenses on the 1st or 2nd of November once all of my expenses have cleared. Because a few of these categories combine several types of expenses, I color code the ones for those categories as I make them so I can total each subcategory and list the final totals on my overview, which brings me to my second subsection, my expense tracker. So this cover page is from the Cloth and Paper Budget Bundle. I don't use their bundle, but I really like the quote on the front here, so I just covered the back with matte adhesive paper. This is probably where I color code the most in this planner. I use stickers to identify and categorize specific purchases, and then I use highlighters to mark the spending categories that I'm tracking for the year. So looking at my key here, these transparent dot stickers are from Nicole Hutch Designs. The blue marks any expense that's reimbursable, so primarily work expenses like parking or mileage, and then the green is anything that I paid for with cash or a check. And then I have these two corner stickers here. The top one is by Daisy Papers in the color Toffee. This one I use for anything that's a sinking fund. And then this one here is by Cloth and Paper in the color Verona. And I use this to mark anything that's a business expense. Below that, I have 6 categories that I'm tracking for the year. So for me, those are personal, stationery, home, food delivery, and allowance. And similar to my budget overview, I couldn't find an expense tracker that had all of the fields that I wanted, so I did create my own. I'm offering this expense log as a freebie as well. I'm working on the 2024 version, but I should have it up on the website soon. So when it comes to tracking my expenses, I like seeing specific details as I'm logging just to make it easier to measure and manage my spending. So I have one column for the date, one for the item or description, a category column, and then a column for the amount that I spent that's split into 2 subcolumns, one for debits and one for credits. And then I also have this little checkbox column here that I use to check off if I've included that amount in my budget overview at the end of the month. I did try and use one column for the amount and then put credits in parentheses, but I didn't like the way that it looked. It was also really confusing when looking at this quickly to determine which charges were refunds or which were expenses. So splitting purchases up, it just really helps me find what I need a lot quicker. So I use my expense tracker to log all of my expenses that are not bills or recurring charges. I also use it to log refunds and reimbursements as well. As you can see, I write down what the expense was, the category that I'm coding it to, and then I highlight the category if it's one that I'm tracking. That way, at the end of the month, when I'm adding up how much I spent eating out, all I have to do is add up all of the green highlights and I have my total. I did get a few questions in my last video about how I break out expenses that are split on here and how to double or sometimes triple code. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but I will film a quick clip here soon going over how I fill out this expense tracker in detail for you guys. Logging expenses in your planner is definitely a love it or hate it kind of thing, and it's certainly not for everyone. And again, that's totally okay. There are so many apps out there that track expenses for you. For me personally, I like being able to visually see my expenses, make little notes, add some color, and just physically write down my purchases. It just feels more tangible, it gives me more control, and it's so much easier for me to see what I'm spending my money on throughout the month. So, for instance, if I'm halfway through a month and I see that I have a ton of green on my page, I immediately know that I need to cut back on how much I'm spending eating out. Where budget apps do come in handy for me is anytime that I want to see trends or what my spending habits are over a period of time. In that case, budget or finance apps are a must have. I've used quite a few over the years. I'll list a few of my favorites in the description box, but whether you're tracking your expenses manually or through an app or another method, I highly encourage you to log what you're spending. Again, it's a really great way to hold yourself accountable and it just gives you more control over your accounts. It's also a great way to catch if something has been incorrectly charged or if you were charged twice for something. Most of the times, banks are good at catching mistakes, but every now and then things do slip through the cracks, and it's always best to report a weird or duplicate charge as soon as possible. If you're not interested in logging your expenses at all, I would at least recommend downloading an expense tracker from the App Store or even your bank's app just to monitor your cash flow. It won't have as much detail, but checking it when you're on the go or even a few times a day, it may help you notice anything weird that may be happening on your account. And that takes us to my last 2 subsections, which are my resources and tools and my password section. So this cover page and insert comes from the cloth and paper budget bundle, and this is where I log bank and account information. I don't put anything confidential in here just in case this ever got lost or stolen, but I have things like contact information, addresses and phone numbers, and routing numbers. I also have a few URLs in here, student loan information, credit bureau information, essentially all of the financial resources that I reference throughout the year. In conjunction with that, I have my password section. So similar to the previous section, I don't write down any confidential passwords in here, but I do write paths to passwords. That way I can list all of my logins here. So for example, if my password is raincloud25, my pathway may be something like the air is heavy this quarter. That way I can still find what my passwords are, but it would be more difficult for somebody else to guess. I originally kept all of my financial logins separate, but I realized that it just wasn't practical for me to have a password section that only had a small percentage of my passwords listed. The one that I use here is by Cloth and Paper, but I am creating my own for 2024. I'm going to be doing walkthroughs of all of my inserts on Instagram once they're published in my resource library, and let me know what other inserts or spreads that you would like to see. And that wraps up my budget routine. I've been using this routine for a few years now, and it's helped me stay on top of my finances so much better than before. There's a lot of budgeting methods out there to choose from, but I think the important thing with whatever method you do choose is that you stay consistent. A lot of times when we spend, we end up buying a lot of stuff and then estimating how much that we spent only to be surprised by the actual number at the end of the day. That's one of the reasons why I'm such a fan of tracking your expenses as they happen. It's such a great tool to help stay honest with yourself and eliminate any surprises at the end of the month. And that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for hanging in there on this one. I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on part 3 of this series, which is my wellness routine and other new content. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram for more planner inspo and freebies, sending positive vibes your way. Until next time, y'all, have a wonderful rest of your day.